The Devil's Passage. Written by Milena Ramírez. Read to you by Sarah Luke. Some time ago, Raul, Pedro, Belen and Fiore, 4 very close friends, decided to take a little trip to Chiu Chiu, a village 30 kilometers from the city of Calama. They had decided to camp, so they brought tents and everything necessary to do it. They enjoyed the day touring the town, eating and looking at souvenirs, until finally the evening came, and with it a midwinter chill that penetrated through the pores and soaked to the bones. "We should find a place to camp, don't you think?" asked Belen, rubbing her arms because of the cold. "I think we should eat something first," said Pedro, laughing. "It's still early." "You already ate," Belen exclaimed, hitting him on the arm amicably. "But it wasn't enough," Pedro said, laughing. His friends all laughed as well. "Well, let's go to eat again," Raul said, smiling. The 4 went to a small stand that sold food, and while they were waiting for their order, an old woman with long white hair and a weird look approached them. "Are you travellers? I've never seen you around here," asked the old woman. Chiu Chiu was a small town, so most of the people knew each other. "Yes," answered Fiore. "Do you already have a place to stay?" "We're going to camp tonight," Raul answered. "You shouldn't camp on the bank of the river," said the old woman mysteriously. "Why?" asked Raul, who started to get curious. "You don't know the story of the Devil's Passage?" The friends remained completely silent, so the old woman understood the negativity. She began to tell the story. "No one travels along the banks of the lower river after midnight." Belen felt her skin prickle with every word the old woman said. With every word, the narration became scarier. "Because the devil comes out of the river with a knife in his mouth, dancing and taking anyone who is in his path." The food came, and with that the old woman retired. Belen was staring at a fixed point. "Don't tell me that you believed that story." Belen was disturbed by her friend Fiore. Belen just frowned. "I think that we should see if this story is true," Pedro exclaimed, laughing. "I like that idea," Fiore added. "I don't want to stay there," Belen exclaimed, scared. "Belen, I don't think that the story could be true," said Raul, trying to calm his friend down. The girl blushed because she had feelings for her friend Raul, feelings that nobody knew about. She had to show the guy that she was brave, so she accepted. "All right, let's go there," concluded Belen. The friends finished eating and went to the banks of the river. They set up the tents quickly, and then they decided to sit down and talk while the hours passed. Belen kept thinking about the old woman and her words, "You shouldn't camp on the bank of the river." The other 3 were joking with each other. "Look at me! I am the devil!" said Pedro, doing an impression. Belen was in thought. She wasn't paying attention to Pedro's jokes. She didn't notice when her friend whispered a soft "boo" in her ear. Belen jumped, scared, and then got angry. "You're like little children," shouted Belen. "I'm going to sleep." With a lot of anger, she went to the tent which she shared with Fiore. Raul just watched as the girl walked away, feeling something inside his chest. Belen couldn't sleep. She was still nervous. She heard her friends talking a while longer, and then they got into their tents. The time passed, and she couldn't sleep. She looked at her watch. It was 12:16. She remembered the story and the old woman, and realised that nothing had happened still. Perhaps the story was a fake, and the old woman wanted to play a joke on them. She got up and went out of her tent fearlessly, and to her surprise, Raul was lying on the ground, watching the night sky. "What are you doing here?" asked Belen. "I couldn't sleep, so I decided to come and watch the stars." Belen smiled and lay down next to the boy. Both were in silence for a long time. Neither said anything. They just felt the cold night breeze on their faces as the river water flowed. They didn't know how much time had passed when they felt the wind begin to blow hard. Both rose startled as the wind changed more abruptly and the dogs began barking relentlessly. They didn't stop to look around. They were a little nervous because the wind wouldn't stop and it began to get increasingly colder. "We should go to our tents," said Belen with some nerves. Something was not right. Raul just nodded and they began to walk. They were stopped. A strange and soft melody began to play. They looked all around, but they didn't know where it was coming from. They felt like their breathing became more agitated. Their heartbeats echoed in their ears like beating drums. Raul looked again, trying to find the source of the music, but there was nothing. He just heard the barking of dogs, and it had been many hours since people had stopped travelling through the sector. The music was closer, and seconds passed, seconds that were eternal. The music came nearer to where they were, and there, in the moonlight sky, they saw him. He was dancing to the rhythm of some terrifying music, increasingly getting closer. Just as the old woman had said, he had a knife in his mouth. Belen froze. Her body began to tremble. She saw the figure getting closer and closer through her teary eyes. Raul watched the eyes of the figure, two yellow and sinister lights. They had to get out of there immediately. "Go and wake up Fiore," screamed the guy quickly as he headed to his tent to wake up Pedro. "What is wrong with you?" he asked annoyingly. "We have to go," Raul said, going out of the tent, realizing that Belen was in shock. He was quickly looking for Fiore. The spent seconds were valuable. Fiore quickly left the tent, noting that the figure was only a few feet away. She felt an incredible despair creep over her body. A scream of terror went down her throat. Pedro ran quickly, returning to the town, followed by Fiore, who was still screaming, completely horrified. "Belen, we must go," said Raul, taking the hand of the girl who was still in tears. Belen just moved her feet unconsciously. She didn't know where they were going or what they were doing. The devil saw them with his yellow eyes, so that was the end. Raul led the girl, and when they were arriving, Belen stumbled. Raul quickly turned around and knelt in front of her. "Belen, you can do it." He gave her encouragement, even though he had his heart in his hand. Belen watched him and just nodded, with a solitary tear falling. They got up and continued running. "The church," said Fiore, while they were running with every force that their feet and lungs gave them. Pedro arrived first, slamming the door very hard. Then came Fiore, who accompanied him, pushing the door desperately. Raul came seconds later with Belen, who was just crying. Because of the cries of the friends, a door of a house next to the church opened. "What's the matter?" asked a man with greying hair. He was wearing pyjamas. "He's following us," the boy tried to explain quickly, pointing backwards. The man, who seemed to be the pastor, looked towards where the boy was pointing. "There's no one following you," said the man. The group turned, seeing that there was nothing behind, and no musical sound was heard. Well, what happened after that? The friends entered the pastor's house, telling him what they'd experienced minutes earlier. The man seemed to understand, and he explained that nothing like that had ever happened in Chiu Chiu. Maybe it was something from their imagination, but they knew that this was completely real. Not all of them could have imagined the same thing. It was too big a coincidence. They never mentioned that story again, but they knew that they would never forget it. There they discovered that there are many stories in the inland towns, but only a few lucky or unlucky people see if it's real. Raul always remembered those awful eyes, the devil eyes. They were the same eyes that the old woman